Imagine you're 83. For about 15 years, you've been building something quiet and enormous. Roughly 780 sealed Star Wars Lego sets, around 1,200 little minifigures, a collection you've reportedly spent about $20,000 assembling over a decade and a half. And then, somehow, that box of toys becomes the center of arrests, a racketeering lawsuit, a tech CEO daring a company to sue him, a $500,000 fundraiser, celebrity pylons, and a YouTuber reportedly fleeing to Mexico to avoid jail. This is the story of how a Lego collection did all of that, and the number that lit the fuse was $200,000. Hold on to that number, because by the end it's going to fall apart in your hands. Let's start calm, because it did start calm. The collector is Ed Mansell of Oregon, though one outlet calls the father Eric, so even his name has a footnote. In November 2023, his son Brian signed a consignment agreement with a bricks and minifigs store in the Kaiser-Salem area. Consignment just means you leave your stuff with a shop, they sell it for you, they take a cut, and whatever doesn't sell still belongs to you. According to the family, the split was 35% to the store, 65% to the Mansells, and the unsold sets stayed their property. The store's owners at the time were Crystal Law and Benjamin Gorman, and for about a year the arrangement worked. The store sold pieces. It paid the family monthly, somewhere between $15,000 and $21,000 total over that year, depending on which source you trust. The store even advertised the collection publicly as well over $200,000, pointing to a rare Cloud City set it said was worth more than $10,000 on its own. That promotional post is real. Remember it. It's where the famous number was actually born, not from an appraiser, but from a marketing post. Now, the turn. In November 2024, Bricks and Minifigs Corporate, the franchisor, based in Utah, issued what it called a Notice of Immediate Termination to Law and Gorman, repossessed the store and handed it to two new operators, Brandon Best and Joshua Johnson, under an entity called Baker Bricks LLC. That repossession is a fact. What happens next is contested. The family says that from this point, the rest of the collection was never returned, that they were locked out of their own unsold sets. Law and Gorman, the original owners, say corporate forced them out illegally and manufactured the defaults that justified it, so the family started looking for help. In December 2024, they approached YouTubers, and some early videos came down after the company threatened to sue. Then, in 2026, they found the YouTuber who would change everything. Benjamin Schneider, Reckless Ben, is a creator in his early 30s whose whole brand, in his words, is showing how these big corrupt companies can just take advantage of the small guy. On May 21st, 2026, he published a video titled, "I Tracked Down the Thief Who Stole $200,000 of Lego." It rocketed to millions of views. And here's where it gets complicated, because Ben didn't just report. According to the criminal charging documents in Utah, his methods included some genuinely startling stunts aimed at the new co-owner, Johnson, allegedly posing as a UPS driver to obtain a signature, having a Confederate pose as a fellow church member, and putting a sign on a neighbor's fence accusing Johnson of stealing a dying man's life savings. Ben himself admits he built a website called WeStealFromOldPeople.com and used what he calls untraditional tactics. Each of those tactics was also a legal landmine. They went off. American Fork Police in Utah responded to about 4 calls from Johnson over a few days in March. On March 27th, Schneider was charged with stalking and targeted residential picketing and booked into Utah County Jail. A second case followed in April, disorderly conduct and trespass, from an earlier visit to corporate headquarters. Now, an important detail the viral version often skipped. All of these charges are misdemeanors. There are no felonies. And in Oregon, the Marion County District Attorney declined to file any theft charges over the collection at all, calling the matter a civil, not criminal. Then came the legal avalanche from every direction. In late March, Law and Gorman sued corporate in Utah's Business and Chancery Court, 12 counts, including fraud, breach of contract, conversion, and defamation. They allege corporate sabotaged them by failing to transfer the lease and bank account, and that a corporate employee said the company would assume the consignment liability. Those are allegations in a filing. No court has ruled on them. On May 27th, the company and its owners fired back, suing Schneider, his LLC, Brian Mansell, and his associate Victor Nguyen. 13 counts, including Utah RICO, the racketeering law usually aimed at organized crime, here repurposed to allege a coordinated harassment campaign, plus defamation, civil stalking, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They sought over $300,000. A judge Tony Graff Jr. granted a temporary restraining order. Take the videos down, stay 1,000 yards from the employees' homes. That order doubled as a gag order, restricting what Ben could say about the company. The company also sent Patreon a takedown notice. Patreon CEO Jack Conte responded publicly and bluntly, "Bricks and Minifigs can stuff it. We're keeping Ben's page up, and if Bricks and Minifigs doesn't like that, they can sue us." Meanwhile, the money arrived. A GoFundMe for the Mansells blew past $445,000, later reported near $500,000 and beyond. Ben said the funds would go into a legal trust for Mansell. The company denied trying to seize it. Big names amplified everything. Streamers CR1 Tyke Cal and XQC, actor Tara Strong. And in the comments, a theory hardened, that the company's owners and the local police were colluding through a shared religion, the so-called Mormon Mafia. Be careful here. That is a theory. The mainstream press, including the BBC, treated it as a conspiracy theory, not a finding. Sharing a religion is not evidence of a conspiracy, and no court or outlet has substantiated collusion. So by early June, the internet's verdict was in. Old man, robbed. Corporate villain, exposed. Hero YouTuber, silenced and exiled. Ben said a gag order could send him to jail if he named the company, and that he was leaving for Mexico. But there's a problem with that story, and it came from someone on no one's side. Around June 11th, the investigator Coffeezilla published a roughly hour-long deep dive, having actually interviewed the company's CEO and COO, and the clean headline started to wobble. Remember the $200,000? No neutral appraisal of the collection exists, and the estimates span a canyon. The store's own marketing said over $200,000. Ben and several outlets repeated $200,000 to $278,000. Brian Mansell estimated $150,000 to $200,000. An appraisal range cited in reporting put it at $85,000 to $120,000. The company's realistic high end was around $95,000 to $100,000, and its earliest figure as low as $60,000. Coffeezilla's forensic read landed the collection closer to $100,000, and crucially estimated that only somewhere around $10,000 to $20,000 was genuinely unaccounted for after a year of legitimate sales and payments. The company claims it found only $2,000 to $5,000 of plausibly related sets when it took over. Coffeezilla also reported that Brian Mansell is being sued for $1.3 million, and that some of Ben and Mansell's claims simply didn't hold up. TechDirt's summary was less a verdict than a sigh. Basically, everyone in this Lego dispute looks sketchy. About the only thing missing, it wrote, was anyone who actually handled this well. So where does it stand? On June 4th, the company announced the Kaiser Salem store had closed permanently, said it had parted ways with Best & Johnson, and CEO Ammon McNeff publicly offered to sit down with Brian, reconcile the sales data, make him whole, and even discuss dropping the lawsuit against him. The original owners moved to intervene, arguing the gag order was wrongly muzzling their separate dispute. Coffeezilla, for his part, called the company's legal strategy a horrible idea, and nothing, not one count, on any side, has been decided by a court. That's the part worth sitting with. A dying man's toys became a referendum, and the internet returned its verdict in days. A number, a villain, a hero. The slower machinery, the appraisals, the filings, the cross-examinations, and is only just beginning, and it's already telling a muddier story where almost no one is clean. The headline said $200,000 stolen. The evidence so far suggests something far smaller and far more tangled. The internet picks its villain before the court ever rules. The trouble is, it almost never goes back to read the verdict.